Aren't those red spiders scary? I sure would be scared if I used these Harbor Freight locks to lock anything up. Really. These Harbor Freight locks, in a couple of earlier videos, I actually thought they were pretty nice. I should have known a little bit better. Harbor Freight, for many of their hand tools and stuff, really is a good value. The term good value means that for what you're paying for, you're getting what you expect. When you buy these locks, it really seems on the outside that you are getting what you pay for, or getting a good value. You're really getting, quote unquote, more than what you're paying for, especially if you were to buy locks like these from more name brands such as Master or Kryptonite. These would be Harbor Freight's miniature U-locks. One comes with their heavy-duty chain, which I'm not even going to talk about here, and one, it comes with their, as sold as just a general heavy-duty bike lock. Now, there is some nonsensical things just to start off with before I get into, the zinc locking pawls, and reading through many of the reviews of these and other online posts through forums where these really seem to be susceptible to impact, basically hitting them with a hammer. They have so many good things going for them, but they just, unfortunately, should have charged just a couple more dollars and used a little bit of extra steel to make them truly secure. To get the nonsensical thing out of the way, we have two locks, and if we actually look at them a little bit more closely, we can see that one is slightly larger than the other, and there's a slight difference in these collars. This is a 1/2-inch shackle lock. This is a 5/8 shackle lock. Which one did you get, would you guess, came with the heavy-duty chain, and which one came with the braided cable? You probably guessed wrong. The larger 5/8 shackle one comes with the braided cable, and the smaller 1/2-inch shackle one is included with the heavy-duty chain. I don't know what exactly happened there. That's really an issue for Harbor Freight to figure out. Now, as far as the quality of these locks, I blame the supplier and them overselling them to Harbor Freight's purchasers. It's really where the root cause of locks that have severe vulnerabilities comes from, is companies have good salesmen who are able to sell to other companies, and they'll say, we'll sell this to you for $2 or $3. And you guys should know that the cost that Harbor Freight is paying for each one of these is less than $5. Most people don't know, but in order to make effective money selling retail products, paying for storefronts, advertising, employees, all that kind of stuff, you need to make anywhere from 3 to 5 times the profit, or charge 3 to 5 times as much as it costs you to make. So if they can sell these for less than $15, they're only paying literally $2 to $3 for them. And that is one of the big things about retail manufactured products, or just manufactured products in general, is that they have to charge a lot more than their real manufacturing cost to actually keep a company afloat. And because of that, that's where all these little corners get cut, and you start having all these issues. The reason I have been railing against the Harbor Freight locks is because they're cheap. People go there a lot. They're a huge organization now with going on 1,000 stores. And so a lot of these locks, I'm sure, are being sold, and what they really have is generally a false sense of security. But they have so many things that they do have good going for them, such as a disc detainer type locking mechanism, which is kind of like a combination lock. It has 6 wheels and the little angles on the cuts. When you turn the key, align all the wheels, kind of like a combination lock, and then it allows you to open the lock. They never have any springs in them, so there's never any tension to operate it. You just turn it, and the lock opens and closes. Now, in some of the reviews, people are complaining about broken keys. These locks, they do make an attempt. They tension from the back of the lock instead of up at the front, so they're harder to pick. You really need very special tools and special skills, and that's actually a good thing. The locks are actually inside the steel tube, which is indeed steel, and pretty thick, which is another good thing. All the internals are metal, except for, well, they are all metal, except that the internal plugs that kind of fill the space are cast zinc, which is fine. What isn't fine is the actual locking dogs are actually cast zinc as well. And zinc is weaker than brass, to give you guys an idea. It's a good metal. The reason it's cast zinc is used so much, and it has been for over half a century, is that cast zinc, there's obviously varying grades of alloy. Some of it actually is pretty strong. They're not using that on this. Secondly, zinc can be cast like plastics. Out of all the metals that you can cast, zinc is the one that acts most like a plastic, where you can cast extremely detailed and have high degree of tolerance control out of metal when you're using zinc castings. And that's why it's so attractive, particularly to the lock manufacturers, because they can make all these small intricate parts out of metal using a high precision casting, which is much cheaper than manufacture, because you just have a molding machine, an injection molding machine, and pound out tons of very accurate parts with a relatively simple machine and a couple of molds that will last quite a long time, because zinc isn't that hard of a metal or tough on molds. And that's my primary criticism here. Besides the fact that they include the smaller lock with the heavier duty chain and the bigger lock with the light duty cable. That was just obviously a mix up at some point, and they probably didn't really intend to do that. Probably at the very beginning of them evaluating putting out this line of locks, they were going to have the big one for the chain and the little one for the cable, and somehow it ended up backwards. Anyway, I should talk about some other good points besides that the lock core is inset and that they use a disc detainer lock. The nice thing about zinc is it doesn't really corrode that much. It's just reading posts about people having these breaking these because the keys stopped working or broke off in them. Just using a hammer to break them open, that's no good. What is good is that they have these plastic housings on both of these with these rotating collars, so you can use the key, put it in, and you can rotate the collar to prevent crud from getting into the lock mechanism, which is a big deal with disc detainer locks, because when they get cruddy, all the discs kind of want to move as a group, and you will never get the lock open. So you really need to keep these lubricated, and if you do choose to get them, make sure that you have the lock, this little thing, rotated to keep it actually sealed and keep crud out of them. And I should mention about the broken keys is happens to actually be part of it due to, bits of metal in the locking mechanism and it not working properly, and part of that's due to user error. Disc detainer locks don't have any springs. There's just no tension. There's just nothing there whatsoever, because there's the same amount of tension as turning the wheel on a combination lock. So what ends up happening is if the disc detainer is not going to open, the key will turn about 90 degrees and one of the discs won't be lined up and it will stop. And a person's natural tendency is, oh, it's sticky, I'm going to put a lot of extra force on there. What you're actually ending up doing is putting a whole lot of force on the tip of the key, and then in one of these deeper cuts where the key is weaker, it twists and breaks off. And that's one thing to know about these disc detainer locks, any of them, whether you have a high-end alloy or these Harbor Freights, is if you're turning the key and it stops, forcing it does you absolutely nothing. It will do absolutely nothing except for break off the key. If they lock up, you just have to jiggle them back and forth, and then it'll just go forward because there is no resistance. So if it stops, you know there's a problem, because normally these locks there's just no resistance whatsoever. And I did want to get that out of the way. So even the bigger one, it's the same deal. It has zinc locking pawls. They are thicker, but they even do something where they have these little tips turned down and they have holes drilled into the bottom. You can see that, so the shackle really lines up pretty well and helps reinforce the lock body. Obviously, when the shackle's inserted, you have that big piece of steel, so drilling it's very difficult. Drilling out through the center here is impossible, because of course it's a disc detainer lock, so it already has just a hole in the middle of the lock, so there's nothing for you to drill out. They have a steel plate on top, not just a tube, but an actual spinning plate, so if you attempt to get a really large drill bit in there, it'll hit that and it'll just spin around. So they just had so many good design features that have been copied from other locks, but nonetheless they are good. And then just a real big mistake where instead of steel, they probably had the bright idea that, zinc, being as thick as it is in these locks, was going to be good enough, when in actuality it wasn't. And even brass would have been better. I should mention one of the last good things, and that's what's just so disappointing about these locks, is just just a touch more effort, and they could have, even if these aren't the greatest of steel, having a 5/8 inch thick shackle offers quite a bit of bolt cutter resistance just due to sheer cross section. Other good thing is this casing that's on it is actually really well on it. It absolutely will not rotate. I've really tried to rip this casing apart, and the way it snaps in under this collar, it's actually surprisingly secure. So, you know, maybe one day Harbor Freight may fix this issue. And the reason I'm kind of also railing on Harbor Freight locks is anybody who may have been shopping at Harbor Freight for a long time, more than 10 years ago, knows that Harbor Freight actually had a time where they were selling Makita saws and Channel Lock brand pliers. It was half of the kind of junky stuff that Harbor Freight has, the budget stuff, and half just more retail tool products. Unfortunately, as they saw that most of their business was coming from the cheaper knockoff products, they just slowly started replacing everything with cheaper products. They've started to turn it back around again with like their Ames electronic products. Their new generations of sockets and stuff actually are improving. So hopefully they will get after the locks. And a long time ago, they used to sell these Solex brand locks, which weren't the best. But man, they were actually righteously awesome locks. And nothing they've replaced them with even come close to those Solex locks that they used to sell. And yes, Harbor Freight is going to get these back. I am going to be shameless and review them and then return them. And that's legitimate because I am not satisfied. Don't feel secure at all. These are spider scary locks. Anyway, I'll finish up with this lock series real soon here, actually by tomorrow. And that's kind of why I'm pumping out these videos now. I'm going to talk about what I've done for less than $50 myself until at some point I have more than enough money. If anybody wants to know what brand of padlock that you can buy and just be basically 100% guaranteed as you can get with a padlock, the company is called Sargent & Greenleaf, and you would have to buy them off of eBay because you'll be blown away by their prices, but they're the padlocks that the United States military uses to secure things like munitions and equipment and facilities. And there are YouTube videos of those being shot with 50 caliber Brownings and being heated up to the point where all the brass is melted out of them from the key lock and still remain in their lock position, if you really want to know what a super duty lock is. Anyway, I really wanted to like these. I do like disc detainer cores because they really do require quite a skilled attack, and that's the idea of a padlock, is just to force somebody to have to use the power tool option to make a lot of noise, to make a bunch of sparks, to basically, have to put in so much labor and effort that they either give up or that somebody notices that somebody is using, power tools against the lock. And it really turns out that like those solid steel the puck locks and the big solid steel American knockoff have some of the worst keys or lock cylinders, where like these have some pretty nice lock cylinders. And the one other Harbor Freight review I'm going to do is of these trailer locks, and they have some dimple cores, and even this one actually has a better lock core than all their steel locks. Anyway, until that next video, this is Catus Maximus signing out. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And bye.